my favorite effects at the moment. I love me a good time lapse, and this just spices it up a little bit. So this is going to double up as a time-lapse zoom transition, but also just as a zoom transition that you can use anywhere or anytime. So that's 2 for the price of none. Now there's a couple of things that you're going to need, or that I will recommend. So when filming your time-lapse, film that one on a 16mm lens or a wide lens, not necessarily 16mm, whatever you've got. And the second clip, you want to film that on a telephoto lens or a longer lens like a 50 or a 70mm. So you can zoom into the time-lapse picture that you've taken, but it's not going to leave you with a very sharp image. So that's why I like to use the longer lens for quality purposes. Now, the other thing you're going to need on top of your editing software is After Effects, because a majority of this is done in After Effects. And if you don't have that, I recommend getting it because it is very good. Some of the stuff you can do in that is it's pretty cool. Roll the intro. Welcome back, my name is Pierce Dillon, and let's get into this. Now, this is going to be catered for people of all skill levels in After Effects, so if I am going a little bit slow, then it's only because I want to make sure it is fully explained and understood. But getting into it, the first thing I do is drop my clips in Premiere Pro, whatever you want to call it, wherever you're from, whatever tickles your fancy. I will generally cut my time lapse in half, then drop the zoomed in clip in between those two halves. Then highlight both my clips, render them as an After Effects composition. Obviously, if you're doing After Effects, then you don't have to do this step, but I like to use Premiere Pro first. So with your clips in After Effects, the first thing you need to do is create an adjustment layer. So we're going to create one of those and then drag the two ends until it's just around the area that the first two clips overlap. The next thing we want to do is duplicate that adjustment layer and move the top one over to the point where the second and third clips overlap. So you're obviously going to have a zoom in here, and then it's also going to zoom back out once it's finished on the second clip. So 2 adjustment layers, because we're going to be doing 2 different things on those adjustment layers. The next thing we need to do is drag an effect called Motion Tile onto the first adjustment layer. Now what Motion Tile does is it basically extends the edges of your clip. So because we're going to be zooming into the second clip, we need to start with it zoomed out, but to do that we're going to have to fill up those edges. So drop Motion Tile on there and then tick Mirror Edges. The next thing we want to do is start creating some keyframes. So if you go to the point where the 2 clips first meet, then go backwards 1 frame, and you want to turn on your keyframes by clicking the stopwatches on output width and output height. We then want to move forwards 1 keyframe, create 2 more keyframes, and then change those values to 200 each. We then want to go forwards 5 frames and create your last 2 keyframes. You then want to change those values back to 100. The next thing we need to do is find Transform in the Effects and Presets and drag that one onto the adjustment layer. Once we've done that, we want to go to the point where our first keyframe is on the motion tile, go backwards 5 frames. Now we want to turn on the keyframes for scale, which is going to let us zoom in and out of each clip. So we do this by turning on the stopwatch next to scale. You then want to go forwards 5 frames, so it should line up with that first keyframe on motion tile. Now you want to change this value to something, it depends on your clip and obviously how your time-lapse is working and the distance that you've zoomed in on the second clip, but I'm going to change it to about 250 on this one here because it works well with the 2 clips that I've chosen. You then want to go forwards another frame and make another keyframe. Now because we're going to be zooming into this shot, we need to first start with it zoomed out, so we want to change this value to 64. Now when we do this, the footage is obviously going to look a little bit strange because the edges are being mirrored with that motion tile, but don't worry because we're going to be zooming straight into that clip, so you're not even going to be able to notice it. Next thing we want to do is go forwards 5 frames and then create your last keyframe and change that value back to 100. So previewing this now, you can see that it's starting to resemble some sort of zoom transition there. We still have quite a bit to do though, so the next thing we want to do is look for offset in the effects and presets panel and drag that one onto your adjustment layer. After doing that, you want to go to the point of the first keyframe for your scale and you want to open up the offset effect. And now we want to turn on keyframes for shift center 2 by clicking that little stopwatch. You then want to move forwards 5 frames, which should line up with the scale keyframes under transform and create another keyframe. Move forwards another frame after doing that, create another keyframe. Don't change any of the values just yet because we want this one to stay the way it is first. Then you want to move forwards another 5 frames and create your last keyframe there. So you should have 4 that are in the exact same places as the keyframes under scale. After doing that, we want to go to the second keyframe on Shift Center 2. This is where we're going to tell the zoom sort of where to zoom into rather than just zooming into the center of the shot. So what we need to do is grab the little circle in the middle of the screen and then drag it until the crosshair moves to the point where you want the zoom to sort of go towards. So because with my 2 clips, I want it to sort of go up and left a little bit because that's where the second clip has actually been focused on. We want to drag that crosshair till it's up around those little trees and tennis courts area, sort of around there. You then want to go forwards to the next frame. Now this one you can't move too much because obviously we have motion tile the edges, so that'll start to show. So you want to just grab that little circle in the middle and then move the crosshair down to where the zoom's coming from. So realistically, if you go back and forth between the 2, it's going to make a line and sort of follow the same direction. Previewing that, you can see that the zoom is starting to go in the right direction. So the next thing we want to do is go to the point where your first scale keyframe is and highlight that one. You then want to open up your graph editor, which is the little button off to the left here, and change it till it's the edit value graph. Once you've done that, it's going to show you your 4 keyframes again. Obviously they're in all different places up and down. So what we're going to do here is make the zoom sort of ramp up rather than looking very generic and just moving at the same speed the whole time. So first thing we need to do once you've got that first keyframe highlighted is choose Easy Ease Out. Once you've done that, you want to drag that little pin all the way to the right. You then want to go to the second keyframe and choose Easy Ease In and drag that one down until you have a nice slope. Once you've done that, go to the third keyframe and we want to choose Easy Ease Out here as well. And you want to drag that one up and to the right a little bit. And then highlight your last keyframe and choose Easy Ease In on that one and drag it all the way to the left. So if you preview that, you can see that it is starting to ramp up. If you do need to fix this little bit here, you can drag this pin on the third keyframe and just move it up a little bit until it sort of looks a bit more normal. And then previewing it again, you can see that it's starting to ramp up and out of that scale. But then obviously there is the edges that are starting to show, and we're going to need to tidy that a little bit up as well. So the next one we want to do is exit your graph editor and then highlight the first keyframe under your Shift Center 2 and your offset. You then want to open up the graph editor again and make sure edit speed graph is chosen. Now the first thing you want to do here is the 2 keyframes on the left and the right, they're actually out of place at the moment. So you want to grab those individually and drag them back to the line down the bottom. Once you've done that, we want to grab the first keyframe or highlight the first keyframe and Easy Ease Out on that one, dragging it all the way to the right. You then want to highlight the third keyframe, so don't worry too much about the second one, but what you want to do is grab the third one here and you want to Easy Ease Out that keyframe, but you want to move it up a little bit. Make sure it stays on that line because if you move the keyframe left or right, it's going to start to mess around with the transition as well. So once you've moved that one up slightly, you want to go to the fourth keyframe and Easy Ease In, slightly drag that one to the left. You don't want to go too far because it'll start doing strange things to your transition as well. So once you've done that, if you go out of your graph editor and preview that one, you'll see that it's really starting to go in the right direction and starting to look like a proper zoom transition. So the last thing we need to do there is add some motion blur. So if you go to your effects and presets and type in motion blur, dragging the CC Force motion blur onto your adjustment layer. Now what that's going to do is make the transition look a whole lot more seamless. So you're putting that on, you don't have to change anything because it's already got the right amount of blur on it, but I feel anyway. Previewing that, you can see that that's your zoom transition for the first bit done there. So what you want to do is create a preset now by highlighting all 4 of your effects with Shift and then clicking each one. You then go to Animation and Save Animation Preset. Call it what you want and make sure it's under User Presets, and once you're done, click Save on that one. So that's the first bit done. Now what we want to do is copy those 4 effects and presets that we've just done so we don't have to redo it all over again. So if you click the effects and controls box and go up to edit, making sure that you've still got your 4 effects and presets highlighted, you want to copy those. You then want to select the other adjustment layer, click the effect controls box again, and then go to edit and paste. So that's just going to paste the exact same thing on. So the second one's obviously going to zoom in as well, but what we want to do is change a few things on that one to make it zoom out. But at least the basis for the zoom is still there. Now with this one, you want to turn off your motion blur because we still have to do a few things and it's going to make it a bit difficult to see what you're doing with that on there. So go ahead and untick that little effect there. You then want to make sure that your keyframes are in the right place, so highlight them all and just make sure that the third keyframe sits over the point where the two clips actually cross over. Once you've done that, you want to go up to your motion tile keyframes and highlight the first ones. Change the values of your output width and your output height to 250 because we're going to be zooming out of this initial shot, so you're going to need some extra motion tile just to fill up all that black around the edges. Once you've done that, go forwards one frame and just make sure the other two still say 200. After doing that, you want to go down to your scale. Basically, because we're zooming out, the premise behind this is obviously just flipping all the values and making them reverse. So leave the left and the right keyframes alone on your scale, but you want to swap the 250 and the 64 around. So change the second one to 64, and once you've done that, change the third one to your 250, because essentially you're doing the same thing, you're just zooming out of that shot now. We do need to change the ramp on this though, because again, that's going to have to be flipped. So once you've changed the values of those, open up your graph editor and then highlight your first keyframe, making sure that you have the edit value graph selected. And then what you want to do there is easy ease out of that one, dragging it all the way to the right. Then highlight your second keyframe and easy ease in that one, and you want to drag that one up to the left so it's making a little slope. Once you've done that, grab your third keyframe and you want to easy ease out that one, dragging that down to the right. After that, you want to highlight the fourth one, easy ease in that one, and then drag that one all the way to the left. So it should basically look the exact same as your first ramp, but it's just flipped over this time. After doing that, you want to exit the graph editor, and now we need to change the direction of the zoom on your offset. So you want to go to that second frame on your offset because we need to tell the zoom where to go now. So you want to grab that little circle on the screen again and drag the crosshair back to the middle initially, just so you can see what you were doing. You then want to direct the crosshair down so that it's going to sort of zoom out to that first clip again. So you might have to play around with this one just to make sure it's in the right spot, but after a little bit of tweaking, you'll find that you get the hang of it pretty quickly. Once you've got that one going the direction you want, move forwards one frame. You then want to change the direction of that offset as well. So grab the little circle in the middle and drag the crosshair until it's going to align with the previous one. Again, we're just trying to make a line by getting those two crosshairs to meet somewhere or as close as you can so that it looks like it's going in the right direction. After doing that, you want to go into your graph editor again and make sure that you're editing the speed graph. You then want to highlight your first keyframe and easy ease out that one, dragging it all the way to the right. Once you've done that, highlight your second keyframe and easy ease in that one, but you also want to drag that pin all the way to the right till it makes that nice slope again. After that, highlight the third keyframe and now easy ease in this one, but what you actually need to do here is just move that keyframe up slightly. So make sure you don't move it left or right again because it'll throw things off. So just move it up till it's about halfway up that line, and then highlight your fourth keyframe and you want to easy ease in this one, dragging this one all the way to the left. So again, this is going to look like the same thing we did on the zoom in, but the graph on this side is just going to be flipped. This confused me when I first did it because I couldn't figure out how the graph was supposed to look, and anyways, yeah, we got there in the end. But if you basically just flip everything, it'll keep it nice and simple for you. So after doing this, you want to exit the graph editor and turn that motion blur back on so that it's going to give that nice seamless transition again. So just preview it to make sure it's all good, and then after that, your zoom in and your zoom out is done. On a side note, the rest of the stuff that I did for the time-lapse zooms in the intro was all using sound effects and filters and everything like that. So play around with that sort of stuff and you can add even more spice to the whole thing. Like I said, one of my favorite effects at the moment, I really like doing it. Time-lapses are a little bit underrated, I reckon, and it just makes it a little bit more unique, adding even more spice to your videos with whatever you're using it for. Like I said, you can use those two zooms for anything now as well. It doesn't have to just be for a time-lapse. I just particularly like that effect. It also means that I can sit down and just chill and relax and not have to run around and worry about the filming, so it gives me a bit of a break. But that's it for this video today, guys. Thank you for paying attention, and if you liked this sort of thing, then please like and subscribe. I will really appreciate it. Like I said, it really keeps me motivated. And until next time, peace. I'll be back. What are you doing? Huh? What are you doing? Come on.